class we were discussing about what? Okay.
Why do we call it? हम बीमार क्यों पड़ते हैं?
अभी हिंदी मीडियम में कैसा लगेगा?
अरे ये इसमें
So the other day we have been discussing about what? What was the last topic we discussed? I gave you 2 questions also, I think, to answer, no? Did I give you some questions to answer? We were studying manifestation, so this is what we were discussing the other day. Let us now go to the next part of the chapter. Now here, did I give you any answers to write the other day? Yeah, देखो check करो.
Yes, ma'am.
What was the question?
Give 3 examples for each common and specific manifestation.
Give 3 examples each for common and specific manifestations. The other day we were talking about manifestation. What did we understand by the word manifestation? Manifestation means the conditions, or the other way to talk about manifestation is symptoms actually. So symptoms, or if I say the common conditions that we come across, which is expressing a discomfort. So the other day we have been talking about various different conditions, various different diseases we studied. No, that if it is chicken pox, you understand some blisters. If it is diarrhea, cholera, you understand some disorder in the stomach intestine. Or at the same time, if I'm talking about diabetes, then there are some other different type of discomfort. So that is what we have been talking about as manifestation. But again, I categorize saying that manifestations can be common manifestations and specific manifestations. I gave you that concept only to be written as a homework. So when I talk about common manifestations, do you remember what I said about the concept of common manifestation? Common manifestation would be something like fever. Fever can be associated with almost about 5-10 different diseases. But if I talk about the high concentration of sugar in the blood, is it associated with at least 5-7 diseases? No, only one specific. If I talk about blisters in the skin developing a whole lot of blisters, watery blisters, is it associated with almost about 5 diseases that you know? No, only one. If I talk about yellowing of the eyes and yellowing of the nails, is it associated with almost about another 6 diseases that we know? No. Then what I'm going to talk about such type of manifestations as specific. But again, when I talk about maybe headache, or maybe fever, or maybe a little bit of some rashes developing on the skin. Now, rashes developing on the skin may be because of some allergy, because of some hypersensitivity, or certain type of viral infections. No, it can be common manifestations. Cough.
Can they like body ache?
Body ache, yes. Body ache is one. Fever is another. Cough is another. So cough can be a manifestation for pneumonia also, tuberculosis also, COVID also, now that you know, and influenza also, all these. Throat pain at the same time, throat pain, little bit of breathlessness also you can write. So these are common manifestations. What do you understand ultimately? What is the summary? The summary is, if I talk about common manifestations, you are understanding जो लगभग few diseases के साथ associated हो सके. Specific manifestation only with one particular disease. If that is what it is specific manifestation. So that is about the concept of manifestations that we had studied. Now we move on to the next concept, that is when we talk about with reference to manifestations, again, let us also talk about the immune system. What is the meaning of immune system? Who knows about immune system? Tell me.
Ma'am, which helps us to fight diseases.
So immune system is made up of what?
WBCs.
Made up of WBCs. And WBCs that we understand What is the full form?
White
White blood cells. What is the function of WBCs in our body? They fight against diseases. So what are they also called? What are they also commonly called? Now that we are talking about WBCs, what are they also called? Sometimes in earlier standards also you have studied. Is it not they are called soldiers of the body? They are always called the soldiers of the body. Why like that? Because they always help us in fighting against disease-causing germs by various methods, by various different methods. So now that I talk about the moment we talk about immune system, something like the digestive system, you know, no? Digestive system is made up of certain cells, certain organs. Circulatory system, respiratory system, like that. So same way, the immune system is made up of certain cells. Which cells are we talking about? The WBCs. The WBCs. Now that we are talking about the WBCs, is it possible that our immune system may be affected? Yes, it may be affected by various different conditions. So if our immune system is disturbed, what will happen?
We will catch disease easily.
We will be contracted by diseases very fast. So did you ever notice in your own class, some 1 or 2 children may be absent quite often because of some or the other disease every time? Hota hai, kabhi hua hai? Did you ever notice anybody in the classroom? Hota hai, quite often. Tum khud? No. Kabhi nahi dekha kisi ko. So now when we are talking about, yes, especially in children, we always come across, growing children, always we come across. Some would be having poor immunity, low immunity, and some may be developed with a good immunity. So what do we understand by good immunity, strong immunity, and weak immunity? Meaning the number of the WBC cells that we have in our body. If the number of WBC cells are adequate, we are supposed to have a strong immunity. Because the WBC cells can give us defense against disease-causing germs by various methods. And if somebody would be having a low count of the WBCs, obviously it is understood that every time that the disease-causing germs are entering the body, sufficient number of WBCs are not there to destroy those germs, destroy those pathogens. So most of the time, this individual may be caught with various different type of diseases. This individual may be suffering from various different type of symptoms quite often. So now, when I'm talking about that, this WBCs quite often can be affected by viruses, various different type of viruses. And one such example that I talk about would be HIV. What is HIV? HIV stands for Human Immunodeficiency Virus. Human Immunodeficiency Virus. So this HIV that I understand, this HIV, the moment it enters our body. Now, how does it enter our body? This HIV would enter our body by various different methods, some few common methods if you have to understand. If, say, suppose a person who is already affected, what are you trying to do? Chew your entire finger. That is what your objective right now is. So what are you doing? Put your hands down on the desk. So now this HIV, if a person is infected by HIV, then what is this person suffering from? This person is suffering from AIDS. If a person has HIV in the blood, if a person is already infected by HIV, what is HIV? It's a virus. There are symptoms, we'll talk about some of them. So now that we are talking about if a person is infected by HIV, then what is this person suffering from? The person is suffering from a disease known as AIDS. And what is the full form? Acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. Now, why are we not saying disease? Why are we saying syndrome here? Why the word syndrome here? Syndrome means a multitude of symptoms that happens to this person. I talk about a person who is suffering from tuberculosis. At the most, I may say some 2-3 symptoms which are major. No? If I talk about tuberculosis that a person is suffering from, सबसे important symptoms क्या होता है for a person suffering from tuberculosis? Persistent coughing, breathlessness, no, and then fever, fluctuating fever हो सकता है, chest pain हो सकता है. So these are some symptoms. If I talk about a person who is suffering from, say suppose malaria, what are some of the symptoms? Again, shivering hair, weakness, high fever. But when I talk about AIDS, the person is suffering from so many symptoms at a time. And that also so many infections at a time. The person is suffering from infections of the skin and the mouth and the eyes. So एक बार में infection नहीं हुआ है, but every time some or the other infection, every time some or the other infection. Why but? The person may start with some infection of the skin and then followed by infection of the lungs and the throat and then the stomach and then the eyes and etc., liver, kidneys. So what is happening? In due course of time, every year the person is subjected to so many infections. So in a few years' time, the person's condition has become so fatal. So, but then when I'm talking about malaria, etc., such type of disease, there's a scope that the person would get better just in few weeks or a couple of months. यहाँ पे ऐसे कभी नहीं हो सकता, because before one particular infection is treated, another two infection the person would get, because the number of WBCs are so low. The number of WBC low क्यों है? Because this virus goes and attacks the WBCs of the body. And that is true for any type of a germ that would enter. If you remember, we had studied one chart the other day where we said that if it is pneumonia, then which part of the body is affected? If it is diarrhea, then which part of the body is affected? If it is chickenpox, then which part of the body is affected, like that, no? So that way, if I understand, HIV, the moment the virus enters the body, this virus would always try going and destroying or going and developing in the WBCs, ultimately destroying the WBCs. And
can WBC be?
WBCs, even if the WBC tries destroying the HIV virus immediately starts entering into the DNA of these WBCs, to talk a little bit in detail. So that part you don't need actually. So if you ask me that why can't the WBC destroy this virus, destroying a bacteria is much easier for a WBC. Destroying a pathogen, much easier. But destroying a virus becomes very difficult. That's the reason we had been talking about COVID for 2 years.
Viruses change their shape.
Not only that, viruses not only change their shape, but the virus, the moment enters your body, it immediately goes and affects your DNA. So that's the reason tackling any viral infection is very, very difficult as compared to tackling any bacterial infection. Bacterial infection, agar COVID, कोई bacterial infection hota, तो वो 2 months and 6 months would have been enough time. But we have seen 2 years. So why such a long period? Why such a long period? Because tackling viral infection is not very easy in the human body. So when we are talking about, again, here these two terms you have to take a note. What is AIDS? A condition known as acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. Why the word syndrome? Because in this condition, a person suffers from so many symptoms at the same time. What is the causative agent for AIDS? HIV, human immunodeficiency virus. Which type of the body cells does it affect? WBCs. So it is actually destroying the immune cells of our body, no? So that's the reason the person's immunity gets extremely shattered. Then first thing to understand that how would a person get infected by HIV? Say suppose HIV infected person, or say suppose a person, a healthy person goes for a blood test, and the syringe and the needles and etc., what are used are already contaminated with the blood of a HIV patient. So that's the reason we always make it a point that whenever we go for a blood test or etc., the syringe and the blades and the needles all should be either sterilized or should be disposable ones, fresh, one-time use only.
You can it because with food.
No, never. So your consumption of food, water, no, that will not make a person HIV positive or HIV, nothing. It is only transported from the body of a patient to a healthy person by the way of blood or body fluids. So say suppose if a person suffers from blood transfusion, if a person is suffering from some diseases or accident or something, and the person has to be given blood, and the clinic or the hospital did not take a note much, and then the blood which has been raised into the body of the patient is HIV positive, then this person also becomes HIV positive. So what are some of the common ways by which HIV can get transmitted from a patient to a healthy person? By the way of transfusion. using contaminated needles, syringe, knives, all these. Say suppose by chance a person cuts the finger or etc. etc. there, and a drop of blood itself is enough to transmit the infection.
And what if the person drinks? Like
Drinks what? Blood.
Yeah.
Drinks blood.
Like
Cannibal or what?
Accidentally.
कैसे ड्रिंक कैसे करेगा? Accidentally कौन ड्रिंक
And
करता?
the blood
Like
is in the
if
water.
I punch him, his blood will go into his mouth.
अरे
Can it be possible?
And
you
what
punch
if,
him and उसका blood इसके मुंह में. Oh my God, I can't even imagine that situation.
and what if the blood falls in the water and we drink that water?
Not necessary, because when the virus is in contact with any other unfavorable condition, the virus may not be able to survive. Straight away from body fluid to body fluid contact. Say suppose I talk about a HIV positive person. HIV positive person, if a healthy person sits with that person, shares clothes, shares food, nothing, there'll be no scare of infection at that time. But when there'll be a scare of infection, when a healthy person shares needles, or if I talk about the knives and the needles and the syringes, or if at all there is transfusion of the blood, or from an infected mother, the child. So that is why these are some of the common routes of infection that can happen.
And if we share food, the saliva doesn't have HIV.
No, sharing food meaning what? You're not going to take the food from his mouth and eat, no.
No, the spoon, if we share.
Generally not. Generally, direct contact of blood has to be there. Mostly it is contracted that way. Direct contact of blood or other body fluids, yes. But in the process of having food together, sharing clothes, sharing comb, generally we say that for infectious diseases we should not do all these methods. But this is a type of an infectious disease. By these methods, it never gets spread. It gets spread only by the way of the blood, body fluid in contact. What are some of the symptoms? Some of the symptoms for AIDS to understand. Some of the symptoms: extreme low immunity this people has. Then, as I say, do you believe that every day we are coming in contact with hundreds of germs? Are we coming in contact with hundreds? Do you have right now in front of your mouth, in front of your nose, hundreds of germs? Right now, yes, probably. Yes. So right now also we have got so many germs on our hands, on our palm, on our face, near our nose, near our mouth. But every day we don't fall sick. Now we don't fall sick perhaps for two reasons. When we are talking about the immunity, if the number of WBCs are adequate enough, then we will not fall sick every day. And second is, if you are maintaining proper methods, protective methods, then we don't fall sick every day. But for this type of people, even they are following protective methods, then also they will fall sick because immunity is very low. So the symptoms, at least 4 or 5 symptoms that you have to remember for this type of individuals: AIDS, people suffering from AIDS. Common symptoms always are they have persistent fever and congestion in their lungs, excessive secretion of mucus in their respiratory passages. That is very, very common for every patient. And apart from that, skin infection, followed by infection of the intestines and the stomach, followed by infection of the eyes, kidneys, vital organs of the body, and progressively the lifespan keeps on becoming shorter. The lifespan keeps on becoming shorter. So that is what a basic concept about AIDS and HIV that you have to remember.
And low immunity is a specific manifestation.
Low immunity is a specific manifestation. Low immunity we generally don't come on. That's why we have taken it as a separate topic. No, immune system, immunity, and related with immunity, which disease? Majorly you talk about AIDS right now. There are some others also. Now we talk about treatment. So now we had already understood what are some of the infectious agents. Bacteria हो सकता है, virus हो सकता है, pathogens हो सकता है, plasmodium, something like the protozoans हो सकता है, no, worms हो सकता है. So now that we are talking the principles of treatment, what are the two methods of treatment? We talk about symptom directed and pathogen directed. Let us take some examples to understand. I'm talking about symptom directed treatment. Symptom directed treatment. First of all, what is symptom? What are the symptoms? We always say, that the symptoms of such and such, or symptoms are of cholera are there, symptoms of chickenpox is there, symptoms of jaundice is there. Well, how do you define the word symptoms in your own words? What is symptom? the reaction?
The reaction that
The reaction the body gives or the discomfort. Or
the reaction
a person goes to the doctor. The doctor makes an assumption. कि क्या हुआ होगा by looking into the symptoms before he gives for a blood test. By looking into the symptoms, the doctor makes an assumption कि शायद ये हुआ होगा. Swelling of the face, तो क्या हुआ होगा? Extreme pain in the stomach, तो क्या होता होगा? What are some of the conditions possible? So if we have to define the word symptoms, you are basically to define it this way: the sign of a disease. The simplest definition. What is a symptom? The sign of a disease. The sign of a disease. Now, are you able to understand that whether a person is healthy or without any discomfort, and a person who is having a discomfort? Can you differentiate? Can you differentiate? Yes, no? Say suppose today your mother is not feeling well, as compared to other days when she is very energetic. Can you differentiate? Yes, you can. So like this, by looking at our friends, by looking at our neighbors, by looking at our family members or anybody else, by looking at a person, we can understand, roughly that the person must not be feeling well. So whenever we are talking about this, what is the simplest definition? Sign of a disease is known as symptom. Now, can you tell me 5 symptoms?
Fever,
Cough, cold,
headache,
Cold, correct, headache,
vomiting,
breathlessness, vomiting, weakness, extreme weakness. So, loose motion. So these are symptoms, no? So what do we understand by symptoms? By symptoms, the doctor can judge a type of a treatment. The doctor can decide some type of a treatment. But again, at the same time, sometimes symptoms may be common. So I said, first of all, symptom-directed treatment. Symptom-directed treatment. So this can be one where, first of all, we understand what is the meaning of this word. What is symptom? So first of all, I may understand, okay, symptoms may be quite a number of these. I may talk about cough as a symptom. I may talk about breathlessness as a symptom. Then I may talk about vomiting as a symptom, profuse vomiting as a symptom. Then I may talk about gripping pain in the stomach. That also can be a stomach ache, gripping stomach ache as a symptom. Okay, that also can be there. So when I'm talking about symptoms, these are some. Can the doctor decide on some treatment based on these symptoms? Yes. Then they give us some tests to confirm. Say suppose if a person goes with gripping pain in the stomach, extreme pain in the stomach, the person is almost getting crooked because of so much of pain in the stomach. Then the doctor must be thinking very much that there must be some infection in the stomach intestine. So you need to give a specific type of a blood test. And then confirms, and then the medication starts. So that is what we are talking about as symptom-directed treatment. No, you can wait for 15 minutes. So now that we are talking about what are symptoms, so that is you understand. Next we talk about is, now try to understand the difference and the similarity. We are talking about pathogen-directed treatment. Pathogen-directed treatment. Say suppose, okay, first of all you tell me what is meant by pathogen. Can you tell me what is the meaning of pathogen? I had used these words earlier also. Pathogen means a disease-causing organism. Pathogen. So when I talk agent, correct. So whenever I'm talking about a pathogen means an agent, a disease-causing organism. Pathogen means a disease-causing organism. So when I talk about pathogen, it can be a disease-causing organism, and agent it can be. So can you give me now some examples of a disease-causing organism? Bacteria can be one, yes. Or I can talk about worms, the roundworms, flatworms can be one. Or I may talk about some protozoans like the malaria and all this. So the protozoans a lot.
And the fungi.
Fungi, yes, fungi. Though fungi cause very few type of diseases for human, but still. Viruses also quite a lot. Maximum is caused by the bacteria. Human generally suffer from bacterial infections, too many. So whenever we are talking about various different type of microbial infections, now let us see here. First of all, we understood by the way of symptoms, we can understand certain type of treatment. But if it is, say suppose I talk about pathogen directed treatment and for symptoms or symptom directed treatment, I may understand that this condition known as breathlessness, it is a symptom. But only because the person is showing breathlessness, the doctor immediately cannot give a medicine. So the doctor quite a number of times would also try to judge that this breathlessness is only because of a bacteria or a virus or a worm. Then give a proper treatment. Okay, then give a proper treatment. So first of all, we understand, take one question here. Let us write these answers. Number one, what do you understand or what are symptoms? It's a very common question that you will be asked. What are symptoms? What are symptoms? What are symptoms? Mention any 5 common symptoms. Mention any 5 common symptoms. ये मिल रहा है पेन कौन ले गया पेन? बैग है, इतना बड़ा बैग में एक पेन भी नहीं है, पेंसिल भी नहीं है। नहीं, पेन के लिए तो बड़ा है। How big is your pen or pencil otherwise?
Pencil.
लिखो, जो भी लाए हो अभी उससे लिखो। What are symptoms? What are symptoms? Mention any 5 symptoms. फटाफट लिखो. I already told you what the answer is. क्या लिखना है? The sign of a disease is known as symptoms. The sign of a disease. लिखो. You will not disturb anybody. Beggars cannot be choosers. एक तो तुमको वो दे रहा है पेन, ऊपर से तुमको ये नहीं चाहिए, वो नहीं चाहिए। हाँ? तो ब्लैक दे रहा है, ग्रे दे रहा है, पिंक दे रहा है, जो भी दे रहा है उससे तुम लिखो अभी। Why are you disturbing him? What are symptoms? फटाफट. What are symptoms? क्या लिखना है? The sign of a disease. Sign of a disease are known as symptoms. फटाफट लिखो. Now write down any 5 symptoms. फटाफट लिखो अपने आप. Any 5 symptoms. फटाफट लिखो. Any 5 symptoms. Done? All of you wrote 5 symptoms. You already got 5 symptoms. Now, so we start one by one now. Try to understand. As I said, somebody goes to the doctor with some swelling in the hand, swelling in the legs. Now, by looking at the swelling, the doctor may first of all give a temporary medicine and then give some test. काफी बार ऐसा भी हो सकता है. So,
to reduce the pain, right?
To reduce the swelling. Swelling, pain, temperature are 3 major types of symptoms that always happen in most of the diseases. So whenever I talk about, say suppose again, swelling of the hand, swelling of the leg, that may happen because of some worm infection also, that may happen because of some fracture also, that may happen because of just some insect bite also. I talk about inflammation. So when I'm talking about inflammation, what is the meaning of inflammation? Swelling. Inflammation matlab swelling. So I first of all talk about, now that you have written down symptom, write down swelling also as a symptom. Swelling is also a common symptom for many different situations. So now when I talk about, the first one is, let us try understanding symptom directed treatment kaise hoga. If there is a swelling in any part of the body, swelling in the eye, in the hand, in the knee, in the ankle, etc., in the finger, etc. If there's a swelling, the doctor first of all will give a type of a medicine to bring down the swelling, and parallelly he will also give some tests to be done, and then he'll say, take this medicine for something like 1 week or 5 days, and by the time do this test and come. It may happen that by the time you take this 5 medicine, your swelling is gone and your test reports are negative also for whatever he wants to check. Now, if it is a swelling, then what type of medicines doctors generally give? Such type of medicines are known as antihistamines. Antihistamines are a type of medicines, are a type of drugs, are a type of treatment. So for any type of swelling, which is known as inflammation, the doctors would basically give what type of medicines? Antihistamines.
And then that muscle relaxants.
Same thing. So, but ऐसा भी तो हो सकता है कि when the person has taken 5-day medicine, but then the swelling did not go, so that may be because of some other infection or some other condition, so that will be confirmed by the test. Then another type of a treatment. But initially क्या होता है, whenever a person goes to the doctor with any type of a swelling or inflammation, the type of medicine or type of treatment is any type of a antihistamine drug. Now we talk about the second category. What is the second condition and what type of treatment? We may talk about fever. Fever, all of you must have written down as a symptom there, no? So whenever I talk about fever as a symptom, we understand that most of the diseases has got fever as a symptom. So the doctor first of all will give a medicine to bring down the fever and parallelly some tests, as I said. So what type of medicines are generally given for high temperature or fever? When I talk about high temperature or fever, what type of medicines? Antipyretics. To bring down the body temperature first. Why? Why should the body temperature should not remain high for a long period of time? What happens if the body temperature? What is the normal regular body temperature that we have?
36.
Not Celsius. What is it?
100.696.
When you talk about the body temperature is roughly around 37 degree and something around 98 degree Fahrenheit. So when we are talking about the body temperature which rises above 100 is something to be worried about. The body temperature should not generally rise above 100. Now with a little bit of minor infection, the body temperature may go a little bit around 99. Less than 100, it is okay. Above 100, it is something to be worried about. And that also if the temperature is something around 101, 102, should not remain high for a long period of time. In that case, the high pressure of the blood may also affect our nerve cells, the cells of the eyes, the cells of the kidneys. So that and especially when we talk about children and elderly person, of course not. So when we are talking about the fever, so that's the reason the doctors would try to give a medicine to bring down the fever and then keep going for those tests and the other reports. So what type of medicine to be given if the temperature is high? Antipyretics. We talk about the next one, analgesics. As I said, a person goes to the doctor with gripping pain in the stomach, pain in the hands, pain in the legs, or pain in the body, extreme body ache, or headache, extreme headache. So these are conditions of discomfort. It's not so extreme discomfort these are. So analgesics would treat what type of discomfort, pain. So are we not talking about with the symptom a particular type of a medicine? Now, under the concept of analgesic, there are so many medicines. So many medicines are there. So we are not talking about the name of the medicines. We don't want to write that. Only the category you have to remember. Yeah. Next is pathogen-directed treatment. Now the next question you write, what are pathogens? What are pathogens? What are pathogens? Mention 2 diseases caused by pathogens. Mention any 2. Pathogen. What are pathogens? Mention any two diseases caused by pathogens. Mention any two diseases caused by pathogens. Write down. Pathogens are disease-causing organisms. Pathogens are disease-causing organisms, especially microbes. Disease-causing organisms, especially microbes. Pathogens are disease-causing organisms, especially microbes, such as bacteria, protozoa, There are many more. At least two you should write. Fungi भी है, bacteria, protozoa, worms, etc. Two diseases I asked you to write. Write down two diseases caused by pathogens. Two diseases caused by pathogens for bacteria. You can just write one. Can you name one bacterial disease? Okay, tuberculosis.
Ma'am, cholera.
Cholera भी लिख सकते हो. Protozoa you can write malaria. These are most common.
Ma'am, what kind of pathogen is in cancer?
That is not because of any pathogen. Cancer is not caused because of any pathogen. But cancer is caused because of the improper functioning of certain cells at any particular period of time, especially for people where this condition is there in the generation, in the family. So sometimes at any part of the time, maybe at 5 years, maybe at 50, you never know, the normal functioning of the cells stops and certain cells starts behaving abnormally with so many distinct features. That is not caused because of a virus, bacteria, worm, pathogen, fungus, nothing. If you go, you will remain out forever because वैसे भी तुम पढ़ने के लिए तो तुम आते ही नहीं हो. You come here only to disturb everybody in the classroom. Now, when we are talking about what I told you, write down two diseases caused by pathogen. So now this part you understand what is a pathogen, what are some of the diseases caused by pathogen. Examples you can write so many. There are those on the tables also that we studied. Abhi, we are trying to understand कि अगर certain type of diseases hai. Say suppose I talk about that there are so many different type of diseases caused by bacteria. Let us talk about bacteria especially.
So like cells die from new cells. So like if
Cells
die to form with new cells, like nutrient cells will die to form new cells.
Okay.
So will that come in pathogens, like pathogen causes? Because when cells like continuously die and don't reappear.
Cells of the body. So cells of the body, every cell of the body has got a span. After a particular span, that cell is a dead cell. And that will be broken down, shattered, and released along with the waste substances of our body. And from time to time, the new cells will develop. But that has got no relation with pathogen. Now, when I talk about the cells in the normal process, when the cells are aging and dying out, इससे कोई disease हमको नहीं होता. That is not responsible. We are not. Our body does not suffer from any disease because of this mechanism in our body.
Like sometimes like the cells won't like
Grow
yeah.
in adequate number.
Yeah.
The cells would not grow in adequate number. That again maybe some deficiency of the nutrient, etc. Will that actually give rise to a diseased condition? Not much. Because if the cell of a body, say suppose I am understanding, that will generally not allow the repair mechanism. That person will become weak or etc. That person may not be that energetic or enthusiastic. Maybe the repair mechanism is very slow. If he suffers from a cut bone, that process becomes slow. But उससे कोई disease generally नहीं हो सकता for that person. Disease या तो deficiency से होता है हमारे body में, या तो कोई agent से होता है हमारे body. These are the major conditions. So now that we are talking about, I said pathogen directed treatment कैसे होगा? सबसे important to understand, most of the type of diseases that humans suffer from are because of a bacteria. So bacterial infection अगर है, then if you also remember, did you ever come across such type of chemical that you have consumed?
Yes.
Antibiotics. So now that I talk about that, most of the diseases that we humans suffer from are bacterial infections, bacterial diseases, and most of the time when you go to the doctor asking for some remedy for the eye infection and the throat infection or the stomach infection, skin infection, etc., immediately the doctor gives you a 5-day or a 7 days or a 14-day antibiotic. So what are these antibiotics? Antibiotics are actually chemical substances. Antibiotics are basically chemical substances of other bacteria that can destroy some other different group of bacteria. Aaya samajh mein? So what is the definition of the word antibiotics? What are antibiotics? Antibiotics are chemicals extracted from one type of bacteria जो और variety of bacteria को मार सकता है. So now that we consume the bacteria, the antibiotic, which are actually bacterial extracts or fungal extracts. So this concept, if I just tell you, do you know when we are talking about this concept of bacteria, a very, very famous biologist, scientist known as Fleming, Alexander Fleming. Now, Alexander Fleming, he was actually working in his laboratory with a particular type of a bacteria. He was working in his laboratory with a particular type of a bacteria, and in his experimental plate he was trying to grow certain type of bacteria, and this type of bacteria was known as streptococcus or streptococcus bacteria. Hello sir. Oh my God, this thing wait now. क्या हो गया अभी? You must be missing you.
No.
So now when we are talking about that, this, I talked about a very famous biologist. Who was he? Alexander Fleming. All these names you'll have to remember. Now Alexander Fleming was... ठंडी लग रही है? नहीं, हाँ? ऐसे ही करता है, बहुत प्यार आता है।
ऐसे कर रहा है।
इतना ज़्यादा प्यार है ना, तो एक काम करो, इसकी घर ही चलेगा।
मैंने नहीं किया। मैंने क्या नहीं किया?
Ariman, क्या नाम है तुम्हारा? Ariman. From the next class, you will sit absolutely alone. Is this understood? या तो तुम पीछे बैठोगे, बेटर पीछे ही बैठो, वैसे भी तुमको पढ़ना नहीं है, तुम पीछे ही बैठो. You will not sit with any person. The moment I see anybody sitting with you, both of you, I'll put you outside the classroom. Now, this behavior of yours is really getting into my nerves. Itna din I've been telling you nicely. Now I cannot give any more questions. Next class I see you with anybody seated, I'm telling you, I'm telling you, I'm telling you, I'm telling you, I'm telling you. All of you. किसी के साथ भी बैठ, ये इसके साथ बैठोगे तो बाहर का हवा 1 घंटा तुमको खाना पड़ेगा. खत्म है, सिंपल. आया समझ में? बोलो.
And in 8, does the virus stops the process of cell division in WBCs?
WBC as it is does not show cell division. WBC or blood cells जो हमारे body में होता है, they as it is don't show the method of cell division, but they are formed in our bone marrow. तो अब जब ये virus body के अंदर आ गया है, it is something like eating away the WBCs very fast. तो हमारे normal जो process है, जो whatever normal time is necessary for the formation of the blood cells, उससे faster है the process of eating away the blood cells by the virus. तो इसीलिए the process of immunity for a HIV patient develop हो ही नहीं सकता है. Something like if your mother gives you 2 chocolates or more 2 chocolates, she says that it is for the full week, तो वो तुम 2 दिन में वो खा के खत्म कर देते हो. So always has a deficiency. Always has a deficiency. So something same like that is happening in our body. Before the cells can come into the circulation, उसके पहले ही कितना सारा cells खत्म हो जाए. So normal level कभी reach हो ही नहीं सकता. Now I'm talking हाँ
What are platelets?
Platelets are another type of a blood cells which helps in the clotting of the blood. उससे infection की कोई relation नहीं है. Now I talk about the word antibiotic. ये समझ में आना चाहिए. What are antibiotics? Now that we consume antibiotic for our throat pain and for our eye infection, but the doctor tells us to consume it for 7 days. But we consume it for 3 to 4 days and we start getting the relief. All of you must have understood that, no, quite a number of times. तो ये कैसे होता है? ये जो एंटीबायोटिक हम खाते हैं, this is actually a type of a chemical extracted from bacteria or fungi. But ये पहले होता था. So what I'm saying is, ये जो scientist है Fleming, he had been working on his bacterial culture. Culture मतलब he wanted to grow them, to study something, which was known as streptococcus. But every time he was observing that कुछ तो हो रहा था, and there were some clear areas developed always. There were some clear areas developed always. This type of bacteria could not grow. Then he started analyzing what type of organisms are here, what type of chemical substances are here, and then he found that ये जो chemical substances है, it is because of a fungus that was growing there every time. And what was the name of that fungus? The name of that fungus was penicillium. And from this penicillium, the chemical substances which were extracted, that was known as penicillin. That was known as penicillin. And penicillin extracted from penicillium, but remember I told just now that penicillium is a type of a fungus. And this experiment has happened many years back. And this penicillin at that particular period of time, for almost a decade or so, this penicillin acted as a best antibiotic for many different infections. So abhi isme se I would love to draw the summary कि whenever I'm talking about an antibiotic, what it is a chemical substance extracted from either a bacteria or a fungus जो दूसरे सारे bacteria को मार सकता है. So that was the concept. But abhi for so many years penicillin, I said for so many decades penicillin worked as a very famous antibiotic. But now as time passed on, number of infections too many, human demands so many, this process of extracting the antibiotic from a bacteria and fungus was not so fruitful because the process takes time. And the moment you talk about an experiment, failures are too many as compared to success. It's not so. So now these type of antibiotic that we all consume are no more the original bacterial product or the fungal product, but they are just bacteria, the chemical concepts. These are just chemicals mixed by certain proportions, X and Y and Z mixed in a particular proportion, and this is what we are consuming today. And which have been made in so many pharmaceutical companies. Can you name 2 pharmaceutical companies of India? जो medicine बनाता है? हाँ, okay. Biotech. We have got the Cadila, we have got the the Hindustan Liver. So all these different. So they are constantly making these medicines by combination of chemicals, X and Y and Z and A and B, etc. like that. So we have to learn this concept in the next class. What are antibiotics? How did they come into concept? And what are some of the most common antibiotics that we understand today?
चलो भाई